All right, today we are diving into something truly fascinating. We're looking at how scientists are using brainwave technology, yep, the brain's own electrical signals, to try and build a brand new test for Alzheimer's disease, one that could be faster, way cheaper, and a lot less invasive. We're going to break down how they're basically listening in on the brain to find the hidden signatures of this disease.
So, to really get why this is so important, you first have to understand the sheer scale of the problem. Right now, over 55 million people around the world are living with dementia. And Alzheimer's? It's the cause in somewhere between 60 and 70% of those cases. That's a huge public health challenge. And honestly, just getting an early, accurate diagnosis is one of our biggest roadblocks. You see, right now, diagnosing Alzheimer's is, well, it's tricky. The most reliable methods, things like PET scans, are incredibly expensive. We're talking thousands of dollars, which puts them totally out of reach for a lot of people. The other main option? A spinal tap to analyze cerebrospinal fluid, and that's invasive and really not comfortable. It's pretty clear why we desperately need a better way, something accessible, affordable, and just easier.
And this is where a technology called EEG, or electroencephalography, enters the picture. It's a completely different way of thinking about the problem. Instead of looking at the brain's physical structure or its chemical balance, EEG lets us listen in real time, to the brain's electrical conversations. It's like a direct window into how the brain is actually working, moment to moment. So what exactly is an EEG? Well, it's a totally non-invasive test. They place these small sensors on your scalp, and they just listen. They pick up the tiny electrical pulses that your brain cells are constantly firing. Think of it like an EKG, but for your brain. The advantages are just huge. It's relatively cheap, it's completely painless, and it gives you a live feed of brain activity as it's happening. Okay, so how do you go from those raw, squiggly brainwave lines to an actual diagnosis? It's basically a four-step process. First, you have acquisition. That's just the EEG cap collecting the signal. Then comes pre-processing. You can think of this like cleaning up a noisy audio file, getting rid of any interference. After that is feature extraction, where algorithms pinpoint the most important patterns in the data. And finally, classification, where a computer model looks at those patterns and learns to tell the difference between a healthy brain and a brain affected by Alzheimer's. But here's the thing, to make any sense of these signals, all the researchers need to be on the same page. You can't just slap a cap on someone and hit record. The way you collect the data is absolutely critical. This is how you make sure the results are actually meaningful and that you can compare them across different studies. That's the only way you can build a tool that's truly reliable. When you're trying to standardize, one of the first questions you have to ask is, how many sensors do you need? I mean, you can have systems with hundreds of them, but what the research shows is that a 19-channel setup is by far the most common. It seems to hit this perfect sweet spot. It gives you enough coverage to see what's happening all across the brain, but it isn't super complicated or time-consuming to put on. And how do they actually record the data? Well, the most popular method, by a long shot, is what they call the eyes-closed resting state. The patient just sits quietly with their eyes shut for a few minutes. It sounds almost too simple, right? But this method is incredibly powerful because it minimizes all the outside noise and gives you a really stable, clean baseline of brain activity. That makes spotting the subtle abnormalities caused by Alzheimer's a whole lot easier. Okay, so after all this careful setup, data collection, and signal cleaning, what are scientists actually finding? This is where it gets really exciting. They are discovering consistent, detectable signatures of Alzheimer's disease hidden right there in our brainwaves. If there's one single thing you take away from this, let it be this. Alzheimer's disease is consistently linked to a general slowing of the brain's electrical rhythms. It's like the whole tempo of the brain's activity starts to decrease as the disease progresses and damages those neural connections. Let's break that down. Imagine your brain's rhythms are like a symphony orchestra. In a healthy brain, all the sections are in balance. But in a brain with Alzheimer's, the slower instruments, the low-frequency delta and theta waves, start playing louder. And at the same time, the faster rhythms that we use for being alert and actively thinking, the alpha and beta waves, they get quieter. This fundamental shift totally disrupts the brain's harmony. And it's not just that one thing, that general slowing. Researchers are finding a whole bunch of related biomarkers. The brain signals themselves actually become less complex, more predictable. The communication lines between different parts of the brain get altered. And key mathematical ratios, like comparing the power of the slow theta waves to the faster alpha waves, that ratio consistently goes up. It's this whole combination of things that creates such a clear, detectable pattern.
What's really telling is that these changes aren't just happening everywhere randomly, they are concentrated in very specific parts of the brain. The temporal lobes, which are so critical for memory, are often the first to show these changes. We also see major effects in the parietal lobes, which help us make sense of the world, and the frontal lobes, which handle our higher level thinking. This lines up perfectly with what we already know about how Alzheimer's progresses through the brain.
So all of this together paints a really promising picture. The science is solid, and it's pointing towards a powerful new tool for diagnosis. But what's it going to take to get this incredible technology out of the research lab and into your local doctor's office?
Well, first, let's just talk about the jaw-dropping potential here. Recent studies that use advanced AI to analyze this data have gotten incredible results. One study, for instance, was able to tell the difference between Alzheimer's patients and healthy control subjects with a staggering 97.9% accuracy, just from their EEG data. I mean, that level of accuracy is a complete game changer.
Which, of course, brings up the obvious question. If this technology is so good, why isn't it already in every clinic? And the answer is that going from a controlled, perfect conditions lab experiment to a reliable tool you can use in the messy real world, well, that's a huge leap.
There are still some pretty big hurdles to clear. For one, there's that lack of standardization we talked about. Different labs do things slightly differently, and that makes results hard to compare. A lot of the AI models are trained on smaller, very specific sets of data, so a model that works great in one hospital might not work so well on a more diverse, global population. We just need bigger studies and models that are proven to be robust and reliable for absolutely everyone. And this idea is captured perfectly by the researchers themselves. They state that the scientific community's #1 priority has to be, and I quote, the pursuit of consistent conclusions and robust verification. In other words, the goal isn't just about getting one amazing result in one lab. It's about building a tool that works reliably for every single patient, every single time. And that really brings us to the final thought here. The potential is just immense. Just imagine a future where a simple, 10-minute, non-invasive EEG test could be part of a routine checkup, giving us an early warning sign for Alzheimer's years before the major symptoms even start to show. This isn't science fiction anymore. The research shows it's possible. Brainwaves could very well become our first and most accessible line of defense in the fight against this devastating disease.